Welcome to Uncharted. I'm your host, Captain Kelly, and with me today is Nick Burnham of Aquaholic. He's such a talented man. He writes, he shoots videography, he shoots photos, he literally just does it all. And the cool thing is, Aquaholic is the most popular yacht tour channel, and he's also just created Motoholic, which I know without a doubt will soon be the most popular automotive channel as well. So now Nick is going to dive in, and share a bit about what I'm sure was an uncharted path to where he is today. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you very much. Great to see you again, Kelly.
Great to see you. It always is. And we'll be in Monaco together soon. So I can't wait for that because I get to see you there. Maybe we get to do something fun. But you do it all. You shoot the videos, you shoot the photos, you narrate, you write, you just do. You're not afraid. You've got this cool Aquaholic channel. You got Motoholic, but first we need some background about you. Where are you from? Just give us the lowdown on Nick.
Okay, I am from the UK. I have lived most of my life in Devon, which is right down. If you think of the map of the UK, there's a little leg that sticks out at the bottom, and Devon is down there. So I'm on the south coast down there. My parents moved here when I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, and I've been here fairly much ever since.
Oh, wow.
And mad keen on boating from a very early age. Don't know quite why particularly, but that was always a thing with me. And failed miserably at school, left at the age of 16 with virtually no qualifications. I think I might have an O-level in something, which will mean nothing to anybody anymore. And then I got a job at 16 working in a clothes shop, a gentleman's outfitters, as it was known, called Dunn & Co. And I did that because I thought sales for somebody with absolutely no qualifications might be a good way to go, but I wasn't particularly interested in clothes. I had an idea of becoming a car salesman because I quite like cars. And then at the age of about 20, I saw a job advertised as a trainee yacht broker, and I thought, well, that sounds cool, playing with boats and getting paid for it. Applied for it, got it, and was a yacht broker. In fact, by the time I was 25, I was running the brokerage office in Torquay, and I was a yacht broker for 20 years. I started in 1989.
I had no idea. I did not know you were a yacht broker. So did you grow up on boats? Did you grow up sailing or anything like that? Or did you just grow up just loving boats?
A little bit of both. When I grew up, my father had a Mirror dinghy, which will probably mean nothing at all to you. But in the UK, there was a newspaper called the Mirror newspaper back in the 60s. They tried to democratize boating, and they invented a boat called a Mirror dinghy, which was made of plywood, and you got the plans, and you made it yourself. And my father built one before I was born, and then of course once I was born and my sister was born, it never got used, and it sat languishing in the garage. And I persuaded him to let me have this thing. He then bought a little open sailing boat himself, and I had this Mirror dinghy at the age of about 14 down at the local yacht club moorings, and I used to sail it down there. So that was sort of my start in sailing. So there's a little bit of background there. But that's about it, really. And as I say, the golden ticket was sort of getting this job with this yacht brokerage. And the funny thing about that was the guy who was running the office. So I did my CV and I did my letter and all that. And I drove over to the office there, and I walked in, and this guy was there, and I put it on his desk and said, I'd like to apply for the job. He said, thank you very much, we'll be in touch. And I eventually got the job, and he told me years later the reason that I got that job was because I was the only person to walk into his office, put my CV on his desk and say, I want the job.
You know what? That is and that is such a strong testament to, I kind of always say the squeaky wheel gets the grease, or even like myself, I do so much better in person. And I think anybody does much better in person. And so you probably get some of the questions, how do I get started in the industry? And I get it all of the time. And I'm like, show up, walk in their door. If you can walk in the recruiter's door and you can be like, hey, this is me. And I'm serious. I want this job. I think it makes just adding that human element. And then it also just, it shows your drive. It shows your tenacity. Like you really, really want it. And that's so cool that that's what you did. Interesting that you dropped out of school too at the age of 16. I dropped out at the age of 15. Anybody listening, we're not condoning that, but I find that it's interesting, and that you went this same route too. So was the yacht broker job, was it just kind of like, hey, I like boats and I need a job? Is that kind of how it came about?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, as I say, I had this idea of going to car sales because I liked cars, and also if I was a car salesman, I'd get a company car. So it was a good way of getting a free car. But at 16, there was no way that I could get a job doing that because I wasn't old enough to drive. So that was why I went into sales and the clothing thing. I had this idea of going into car sales, and I saw this job advertised and thought, well, that sounds great, playing with boats, and that was about it. So it wasn't a sort of a, so much of my career has been by lucky chance and accident and so forth. And I think that was the first one.
And that goes to, I've been talking to some 20-something-year-olds, which is a lot of the industry, and one in particular, I'm pretty close with her, and she's been talking about, what she wants to be when she grows up, and should I be this and should I be that, and should I have it all figured out already, and she's only 20-something years old, and I'm like, God, no, you're not going to have it figured out already. And this is the other thing, sounds very similar to the way that I am, is my eyes are wide open everywhere I go, looking for opportunity. So even though you say that these jobs would just kind of happen upon you, I got to believe that you were willing of accepting the opportunity that might come along, and that you had your eyes peeled for what might potentially be there in front of you for you to latch onto.
Yeah, I think I often get comments in my videos because obviously I'm touring a lot of very, very expensive boats, and people say, how do these people get so successful? How are what's the secret to success, to be able to buy these boats and that sort of thing? And I'm not in the league of the kind of people that can buy these £1 million boats. I'm not there, but nonetheless, I think I'm in the grand sense, I'm sort of reasonably successful. But I always say, you know what? You need two things. You need a bit of luck and you need a lot of hard work. And you won't do anything without both of those things. So there's plenty of people out there who've worked really, really hard their whole life and they never get anywhere. And then there's a lot of people over there who get really lucky and they don't get anywhere. You need to have that bit of luck and and to see those opportunities, like you've just said. You need that, and then once you get that opportunity, once you get that bit of luck, once you get that thing put in front of you, you need to go like hell at it.
Absolutely. So is that what you did as a yacht broker? You saw the opportunity, you pounced, and you went like hell at it?
Yeah, I think so. I really loved that job. It was in 1989. Now, in 1989, when I started, it was right at the end of the 80s boom, when everything was going nuts. And it was when we went into recession in the early 90s. You're probably much too young to remember this, but that's
I was born in 81.
What happened. There you go, you see. God, you'd have been 8. Oh, my God. Anyway, well, there was this huge recession, and of course, yacht sales really, really stalled. The office that I was working in, there were 2 other guys who were sort of above me. There was a manager and then another guy and then me. And they got rid of the manager guy. It was just then us 2, and then the other guy went for whatever reason, and then it was just me. And they more or less said to me, look, because the office was owned by a parent company, and we had a meeting, and they said, look, just do what you can to try and turn it around. And over a period of about 5 years, I managed to do that. Partly, I have to say, because we were gradually coming out of the recession, so obviously that helped. But also, I have this philosophy in business and in personal life that there's 2 ways of having more money. One is to earn more, but the other is to spend less. So I went through a period of really cutting the overheads right down for that company. I halved the size of the office. I slashed the advertising budgets. I thought there's no point selling all these boats if all we're doing with the money is paying the overheads. So get the overheads down and there might be some profit. And so that gradually turned things around, and then it was pretty good. And I thought I'd be doing that job forever. It was hard work, but it was good fun. And then about 2007, 2008, the parent company changed hands, and then we went into another big recession in 2009.
Yeah.
So they bought the company just in time for it to go from making loads of money to I guess, losing loads. I never saw the books for the parent company, but whatever the reason, they decided they need to make some fairly major cuts, and one of the cuts they made was my office. So in 2009, I was out of a job.
Oh, oh my goodness. Okay. So, and was that hard for you, or did that then open you up to other things? Did that shove you in a certain direction? Like, how did you perceive that challenge? Because you're definitely very much like me. Yes, you need a little bit of luck, but you need a whole lot of hard work. And, and I find myself telling, people like that, I'm like, there is just a ton of work that goes behind, any successful person. They just work so hard. So then when you lost that job, then what was next for you? Is that?
Well, it was a strange time because 2009, nobody was hiring in sales because everyone was trying to cut costs. So, and I had been working pretty much. My first job I got by lying and saying that I was 13 years old when I was 12 and did a paper round. That was my first job. And I did paper rounds all the way through school, and I did dishwashing and all the usual stuff that you do when you're at school. And so I had worked in one capacity or another since the age of 12. And suddenly there I was, I'd been made redundant, and I had no job. And it was weird. It was really weird. In a way, it was quite good, because for the first time ever I stopped. Because you know what it's like, even when you got days off or whatever, you're still thinking about, I must sort that out, I must make sure I do that, I must ring Fred. You know what it's like. Yep. So that was quite weird. And another thing was that I had, during that 90s recession, I'd bought a house, only a cheap little sort of 3-bedroom terrace house, and done it up. So I'd bought it at the right time, I had a very low mortgage, and I'd spent that time paying the mortgage down. So I'd just cleared the mortgage. So my overheads were really, really low. So I didn't have to worry too much. But I did need to find a job, and I scratched around, and eventually, after 9 months, I got a job selling cars, ironically, which was funny because that was kind of what I thought about doing right at the very beginning.
Oh my God. So has sales always been an interest to you? Has that always been just something that you've gravitated towards?
I think it's sort of it's more about, it's all I knew, and it was all I was kind of qualified to do, because you don't need much qualification for sales. So I think that was the reason. I don't think it was a deliberate, this is the path I'm going to take. I think it was just kind of how it came along. But I got this job selling cars. Oh my God, it was the most boring job. I was selling Fords, and in a little sleepy town. And to be honest with you, the interesting thing about it, which hadn't really occurred to me, was the fact that most of the people buying those cars have no interest in cars. They just need a car, And I don't mean that as a criticism. It's the same as me buying a fridge. I just go and look, and how much is a fridge? Well, that's a fridge. It's the size I want, and it's the color I want, and it's the right price, so I'll buy that. I don't care.
But yeah, they want to tell you about it, but you don't want to hear anything about it. You just need the fridge, but they want to tell you why you need this fridge. Kind of probably like when you were selling the cars. You're like, I want to tell you all about the car, and they're like, dude, I just need a car.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a strange, and especially coming from boat sales, because anybody buying a boat is massively into boating, and especially the boat that they're buying. People buying cars, it's just a function of life. It's like it's just something to get done and get on. So it was a weird thing, but there was a very interesting thing that had happened a few years earlier, and that was that in around 2006, so 3 years before I was made redundant, 2006, there's a magazine in the UK called Motorboat and Yachting Magazine, which is a really good, it's like a real proper prestige magazine. And of course, we used to get it at the office because I think we advertised in it back in the day. And they had a column that they started called and you'll like this, because you might want to think about this, they called it The Secret Skipper. And it was a skipper in the Med, and he was writing stories anonymously for the magazine of, you know what it's like, especially with charters, all the crazy stuff that goes on.
Mm-hmm.
So he was anonymously spilling the beans on some of these antics and bits and pieces, and it was a good
I love
column. It was
that.
amusing.
It
Yeah,
would
yeah,
have to be anonymous. You couldn't attach your name to it. That is such a brilliant idea to like tell the stories and then be able to tell them and share them, but then you don't get in trouble with it because nobody knows who wrote the story. I love that.
exactly. Yeah. Anyway, I used to read this and I used to enjoy it, and I used to think I could do this. I could do this, but for sales, brokerage. So there was another magazine in the UK called Motorboats Monthly magazine, which was sort of, again, well up there, but sort of slightly down a little bit perhaps from Motorboat and Yachting. Actually owned by the same company, strangely enough, because they set up originally as separate magazines and separate companies, but the company that owned Motorboat and Yachting eventually bought Motorboats Monthly. Anyway, I contacted Motorboats Monthly and said, you know how Motorboat and Yachting have got this secret skipper? Do you fancy having a secret salesman? And they said, yeah, that sounds great. Write us 4 stories, about 500 words each, and if they're any good, we'll set up a regular thing, and you can write a regular column. So I thought, yes, no problem. So I wrote off 4 stories, sent them off. They said these are great. They published them, and they said keep sending them in. I wrote that column. Nobody knew it was me for years, probably 8 years. I wrote that column. But what was interesting about it was that when I got made redundant and when I got the job working for Ford, what I was trying to do in the background was do more stuff. I wanted to do boat testing and boat writing and all that. And of course, I had this opportunity of the fact that I knew the editor of this magazine. So I was bending his ear, saying, "Come on, I could do some great stuff." And I went up and met him up in London and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, it'd be great. Nothing came of it. And the day I started at the Ford garage, he sent me an email saying, "Oh, can you do us a boat test?" And I thought, "Oh, really? Now?" And I thought,
No.
I just started this job. Do I do it? Don't I do it? And then I thought, do you know what? I'll do it on my day off. I'll go and test this boat on my day off. I can write it in the evening. So I went and did this boat test for them, and wrote it up, and they quite liked it, and they published it, and then they asked me to do another one. And over the space of about a year, I started doing a bit more, and in the end, I had to sort of make the decision. And in the end, I quit the job working for the Fords and became a freelance writer. So I didn't work for the magazine; I was freelance, but they took a lot of stuff. And then the next thing that happened after that was I realised that they would send me to do a boat test, and then they would send a photographer to do the test with me, and he'd do the photographs, I'd do the writing, and away we go. And I thought, you know what? There's plenty of freelance photographers and there's plenty of freelance writers, but there's nobody doing both. And if I could get myself to a standard where I could do decent quality photographs and then be able to say to a magazine, listen, I could just give you the whole lot. All you got to do is say to me, go and do that boat, and I'll come back with writing and with photography and everything you need. And you only have to pay for me, and you only have to pay travel for me as well, rather than 2 people. So I bought some camera equipment, and I went on a few courses, and I got myself up to speed with photography. Not to any mega standard, but certainly enough to be professional. And away we went. And I remember actually something which made me very proud was I did a boat test in Italy on an Azimuth, a fairly small one. And they said, and of course, a lot of the manufacturers will do their own photographs anyway. They'll do a photo shoot of a boat so that when a boat tester tests it, they can say, there's a whole load of photographs, away you go. And the editor said to me, make sure you get the press photos from Azimuth for that boat. And I said, yeah, no problem. I said, but I'm going to do some myself as well. He said, yeah, no, that's great. Do yours, but make sure you get the ones from Azimuth so that we've got those as well. So I said, great, yeah, no problem. So anyway, I went and did the test, and he emailed me and said, how's it going? And I said, fine. And I said, here's some of the photographs that I've taken. And I sent them back, and I got an email back 5 minutes later, and it said, don't worry about the photographs from Azimuth.
So he liked yours better. That's awesome. So is this how Aquaholic was born?
Well, you see, here we go on to the next stage of my crazy journey. Because what happened then was, after been doing that for a little while, and I was writing more and more of the magazine, I was getting to the point where I was writing a third of that magazine every month. I was doing new boat tests, used boat tests, product reviews, all kinds of stuff I was writing for that magazine, and photography and all of that. And then the editor said to me, can you do some video? Because, of course, YouTube was just starting to happen in a big way. Can you get some video? And I thought, Christ, well, all right then. Anyway, this was actually before I started doing the photography myself. I was still getting a photographer to come down with me. And I remember the very first boat test I did, and the video is still on the internet, and it's terrible. And it was a Cobalt 243, I think it was. And I remember the photographer said, I'll do some video of you. And we got some video of you driving it and all that. And we got back in the dock and he said, right, I need you to talk about the boat now and show some of the bits on the boat. I said, okay. And the guy who was the dealer for the boat was there. And I had to say to him, I said, look, I promise I'm not being funny, but I need you to go away because I can't do this in front of you. I had to get the dealer to go away. I was so self-conscious about it, and cobbled together some video. And that was how the videoing started, not with me filming, but with being filmed by the photographer. Well, then when I started doing my own photography, my next level then was to try and do video. And eventually I got myself to the point where I was able to give my camera to the dealer when I was doing a boat test and say, can you point that at me? I'll be driving the boat going, hey, this is the new XYZ Turbo. We're out in Florida or wherever we were, and put some video together as well. So now I'm freelance. I'm doing 30% of Motorboats Monthly magazine. I'm doing all the photography as well for everything that I'm doing. And I'm doing video and it's all going great and it's fantastic and my whole career is on track. And then I get a phone call from the editor saying, they're shutting the magazine down.
No, just when you were on top of the world.
Yeah, because it wasn't making any money. Nobody was advertising. It was still the recession. We're talking now 2013. And the magazine, I mentioned that the magazine was owned by the same company that owned Motorboat and Yachting. And what they decided, perfectly sensibly, was why have we got two boat magazines not making any money? We should just have one magazine and make a bit of profit. So they they killed it dead.
So did that send you for a bit of a tailspin? I mean, what did you do? Were you, what did you do?
It was a bit unfortunate. I spoke to Motorboats and Yachting magazine and said, look, because they're part of the same company, can I come and do some stuff with you? And they said, well, we'd love you to, but, we've obviously got our own people and all that. They took a column from me. They wanted me to do a column about my own boat because I bought a boat by then as well, which was, literally like a year before. And so they did that and I think something else, but, just really, really minimal stuff. And then I had a brilliant idea. And it struck me that what I needed to do, so you've got all these boat magazines all around the world, right? And there's Beneteau, they'll launch a new boat down in the south of France, and all these magazines send their journalists over, and they all fly over to France, and they all meet up, and they all test this boat individually, and they all fly back, and they write their things, and they charge their magazines for the story and all that. And I thought, why don't I contact all these magazines, because they're all hurting for money, and say, look, I'll go and I'll test a boat, and I'll photograph it, I'll do everything, and I'll write the test, and I'll let you have that test for a third of what you would normally pay for a boat test. You get the photography for free as well, and there'll be no travel expenses. But that test won't be exclusive to you because only the magazine in that country will have it. So if a magazine in France says, yeah, I'll take that, then no other magazine in France gets it. But a magazine in Germany can have it, and a magazine in Italy can have it, and a magazine in Florida can have it, and a magazine in the UK can have it. So it's like a syndication. So each magazine knows that they've got the exclusive in their country, but not worldwide. Now, if I sell 5 of those, then if I'm doing it for a third of the normal price, 3 of those cover all my costs, and then the other 2 cover all my expenses, and I'm back making money again. So that was my plan.
Brilliant. And
isn't it?
That is brilliant. That is so brilliant because they kind of get exclusivity, but kind of not, I mean, so it's kind of a good
fraction.
Yeah, they pay a fraction. They get, quasi exclusivity, and then you make more money. That's a brilliant idea. Yeah. Okay. So is this what became Aquaholic?
No, that idea completely flopped.
It did?
Yeah.
It completely flopped.
Yeah. Completely flopped. I sold a few, but but not enough to make it worthwhile. And what was also happening was I was saying to these people, look, this is the test. This is what you get. It's not personal to you. It's just I do it, you get it. And I get them writing back going, oh yeah, we need you to write more about the engines. We need you to write more about the accommodation. I go, yeah, no, that's not how this works. This is just a standard thing. You get it. You do what you like with it. So yeah, it wasn't really working out. Anyway, during this time, I had started the YouTube channel. I had this idea of doing YouTube videos, but I put a few up, and nothing much had happened. You know what it's like trying to start these things off.
Oh
it was all fairly dead.
It's hard.
But while I was, it is. It's because there's so many people doing it. That's the trouble. There's so many people out there trying to do the same thing, and there's so much stuff already out there. So anyway, I was out doing this magazine thing where I was doing the syndication thing. So what I was doing was I was going to like some manufacturers they'll do a week where they get all their new models together and they get all the journalists from all around the world and they do all the boat testing so they can get everything all done at once, which is a really good idea. And Jeannot down in the south of France in Cannes had an event. And I went down there to test some boats, to do some writing for this syndication thing that I was still trying to get to work, but wasn't. And it was lunchtime, and I'm a very, very fussy eater. I'm terrible. I irritates myself. It must be awful for other people, but it really irritates me. Anyway, I started using a GoPro.
At least you own it. At least
it is what it is. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, they stopped for lunch at about 1:00, and they laid all this stuff on, and I wandered up, and I looked around, and there was nothing there that I liked at all. The only thing there was some bread rolls. So I had a couple of bread rolls and thought, well, solid. And I wandered back down onto the dock just to have a wander around the boats. Nobody was there. It's just all the boats are all tied up. They're all open. Everybody's having lunch. I'm wandering about. I've got my GoPro in my hand. And parked down there was a Prestige 630S. It was one of the very first ones. And I thought, I'm just going to walk around it and film it with my GoPro, just almost as something to do. And that was the very first Aquaholic yacht tour.
Wow. So this was kind of like a happy accident. Aquaholic just kind of happened. Wow, that's so exciting. Yeah. Wow. And so then what happened from there?
Well, okay, so it goes on. So I started doing a few more yacht tours, and they kind of ticked along. They didn't do mega views, but they sort of ticked along. And by this point, I was doing a little bit more writing for Motorboat and Yachting magazine, and I was also doing a little bit for Boat International, and I was doing a little bit for Classic Boat and a little bit for Practical Boater. So I'm gradually trying to build back up the freelance writing and photography thing, because that's what I had been doing before. It's not going great guns, but it's ticking along. It's earning a little bit of money. And I'm doing all right, and the YouTube thing's not doing very much. It's getting a few views, but it's not going mega. Anyway, I wrote a feature for Motorboat and Yachting. It was only a little half-page feature, and it was about a super yacht called a Dynamic GTT 115. It was quite an unusual super yacht with hybrid drive, and they wanted me to write an article about it. They didn't want me to go and test it or anything like that. It's only a half page. They said just get some photographs from the manufacturers, have a chat with them, write half a page about it. Fine. I phoned the guy up and I said, writing this thing for Motorboat and Yachting, and can I have some photographs and some information? He said, yeah, of course, no problem at all. Sent me some photographs, had a little chat about it. I wrote the article. And he said, right at the end, as a throwaway comment, he said, the boat's down in Monaco. If you're ever down in Monaco, give me a shout. He said, if you want to see it, I'll show you over it. So I said, okay, well, thanks very much. Didn't think any more of it. About 2 months later, it was late September, and I had a week off work. And I'd arranged to do some things. I'd arranged to go to a Jimmy Buffett concert in Paris. And I had arranged to do a boat trip with a couple of friends locally. And that was like the first half of the week. And the second half of the week, I hadn't got anything arranged. And I thought, I know me. I'm going to end up working, because I just will. I'll be at home. There'll be stuff to do. I'll get on and do it. You know what it's like. I thought, if I stay here, I'm just going to work. And this holiday is going to be a 4-day holiday instead of a week. why don't I book a cheap flight to the south of France, get an Airbnb, and just go down to the south of France for a couple of days? Because, it's nice. So I booked a place in Cannes, got a cheap EasyJet flight, got it all arranged, and thought, I'll go down to Cannes for 3 days. And then I thought, and you'll like this, I thought, if this was a business trip, I wouldn't have to pay for it. It would be a business expense.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't have to pay for. I would have to pay for it, but it would be through my company, not through me. So I phoned the guy with this dynamic GTT 115, and I was quite interested to see it anyway. I hadn't really been on a super yacht very much by then, and I said, "Listen, I'm coming down to the south of France. Can I come and have a look at your dynamic GTT 115?" And he said, "Yeah, of course you can. No problem." I said, "Okay, great, but can I film it?" And he said, "Well, what for?" And I said, "Well, for my YouTube channel." And he said, "Well, I don't know. Let me speak to the owner and all that sort of stuff. I'll come back to you." And he came back to me a couple of days later and said, "Yeah, that's okay. Well, they're happy for you to film it. Come down." So I thought, great, this is now a business trip. I can go down, I can film this boat, I can have a few more days, and I can write the whole thing off against tax. Right? That was the reason for doing it. So I went down there, had a couple of days in Cannes. I'd arranged to see this guy. I got on the train early in the morning, went out to Monaco, met this guy, looked at the boat. Boat was fantastic. Made a video, came off, lovely, thank you very much. Put the video on YouTube. It went mad. It had over 1 million views.
No. So this is how Aquaholic was born.
This is one of the things. Yeah, there's a couple of things like that, but yeah, there was that. And the other thing that happened was when I was writing for Boat Boats Monthly magazine, there was somebody emailed. I'm a massive fan of Miami Vice. Do you remember Miami Vice? You're probably too young.
Yes, I do. My mom loved Miami Vice.
There you go. Well, I'm a huge fan of Miami Vice, and I've got the whole lot on DVD and everything else. And somebody sent me an email, and they said, "Did you know that the original Miami Vice boat is up for sale? And it's all been restored." And so he sent me a link to a website with it on, and sure enough, there it was. And I spoke. This is when I was still writing in Motoholic Monthly magazine. I spoke to the editor and said, "The Miami Vice boat's up for sale. We should do a story on it." And he said, "No problem. Give the guy a shout. Get him to send you some photographs to write the story." So I contacted the guy who owned the boat now, a guy called Jim in America. It was in Ohio. And I said, "Listen, I'm in from the UK. I'm writing this boat magazine. I'd love to do a story on your boat." And we had a good chat about the boat. He said, "I'll send you over some photographs of it and everything else." It was going to auction a couple of months later, so he was quite glad of a bit of publicity and stuff. And then he said, "You should come over and have a go on it." Now, this is like telling us, you know what a Trekkie is, don't you?
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's like telling a Trekkie he can have a ride on the Starship Enterprise. This is mega. So I spoke to the editor of Motorboats Monthly, and I said, "Listen, he's invited me over. I've got to go over and have a go on this thing." And he said, "No, we can't." He said, They won't cover the expenses for that." He said, "We're not going to fly to America just to go on the Miami Vice boat." And I said, "Listen, if you cover the expenses for me to go to America, I'll do the story for free. I won't charge you for it." And he said, "No, we can't. It's too much." And I said, "Okay, let's turn this around. What's the most you can pay me for a story?" And he said, "Well, if you could do 5 pages and you've got the photography and everything else, we could come up with this figure." And I looked at how much the flights were, and the flights were about £400 more than the figure. And then I thought, you know what, stuff it. For 400 quid, I'm going.
You have to. I was like, Please take me. Yes, you have to go. Wow.
So I went out to Miami. No, sorry, not to Miami. I went out to Ohio.
Where
and
in
I met
Ohio?
this guy. It was on Lake Erie.
Okay.
And we went out to a place called Put-in Bay.
Yes, I know, Put-in Bay, Ohio. So this is just how small of a world it is. I'm from North Central Indiana, which is like not near any body of water, and then wind up into yachting. But then I find out years later that one of the big marinas in Put-in Bay is actually owned by someone from the same town that I'm in. And I'm like, what are the chances of 2 small town Indiana folks having anything to do with the yachting and boating industry? So that's too funny.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the way the story went, I went out there. I did the had to go on the boat. It was absolutely amazing. It was a wonderful couple of days. The guys out there were brilliant. He had a friend who was a professional photographer. He did the photography for us. It was great. And I borrowed a camcorder before GoPros and everything else. I borrowed a camcorder and just got some video. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just got some video of the boat and me driving it and that sort of thing. The story went in the Motorboat and Yachting magazine, Motorboat's monthly magazine, and the photography, and they used a little bit of the video, and but not very much. And I made my own video for myself that was much longer, and I sent it to the guys out in America who got the boat. Here's a video, just a little memento of our few days together, because we all had a great time. When Motorboats Monthly shut down, about a year later, after I started the channel, I thought, the video I made, it was quite a long video. It was like about nearly an hour. I'm going to chop it up, and I'm going to put it onto my YouTube channel, onto Aquaholic. And I put it onto Aquaholic, and nothing much happened. And that was fine. Got a few views, nothing much happened. And I was still doing the boat testing for Motorboat and Yachting then, and I went down to the south of France to do something for them. And I happened to look at my YouTube thing, and I thought, that's had 1,000 views in an hour, which was unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. It would get 1,000 views in a day, maybe, or a week. 1,000 views an hour. And I checked it, and it kept going, and it kept going. And it was one of those Miami Vice boat videos had gone properly viral. I mean, it was just going nuts.
Wow.
And it was staggering. And then I thought, do you know what? Because at the time, it might still be the case, you needed to have, in order to monetize the channel, you needed to have 1,000 subscribers, and you needed to have 4,000 hours of watched time within a 12-month period. And this video took me past the 4,000 hours.
Wow. That's amazing.
But I didn't have enough subscribers, so I'm desperately trying to get subscribers before we go on another year and run out of that 4,000 hours. Managed to get them up to 1,000 subscribers, monetize the channel, and by then this video had fallen right back again. They go mad for about 3 or 4 days, and then they drop back to nothing.
Yeah.
But I got the channel monetized, and the reason I got the channel monetized was I thought, if it's monetized, YouTube are bound to put more views my way because they're going to earn money from it.
Yeah.
They say they don't, but they're bound to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
Well, they don't. It made no difference whatsoever. They were completely right that they don't promote channels more if they're monetized. But what did happen was I looked at the thing, and like in one day I'd earn like about £1.50, which is about $2, and then another day and I'd earn $1, and another day and I'd earn $3. And I thought, hang on a minute, this is good. I should do more of this. And that's how it really got kicked off, was with that video.
Wow. So thanks to Miami Vice, Aquaholic is born. Wow. Oh my gosh. I love it. Oh, this is fantastic. Wow. Yeah. So this just goes, wow, Nick, this just goes to show you what a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work will do. Because
exactly.
Aquaholic is like the boat channel. Like, it is the boat channel. And I knew you long before you knew me. And so when you reached out to me last year and wanted to do something, I was like, oh, Aquaholic Nick? I'm like, no way. Like, you're just like, oh my God. Like, I don't know if you know it, but you are like the man when it comes to boats and YouTube. And like, that is just what a story that is, So that just goes to show again how important it is to have a little bit of luck and a whole lot of hard work. That's fantastic.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And, when I look back at it all now, and I just think, those chances, the chances of me doing that Miami Vice thing, the chances of me getting on that dynamic GTT 115, all of that. But the thing is, I could have done nothing with that information. The guy could have said, come out and have a look at that dynamic, and I could have said, oh, thanks very much, and done nothing about it. And I could have seen that thing in America with the Miami Vice boat, and I could have thought, wow, the Miami Vice boat's for sale, and done nothing about it. But because I did, good things happened. But having said that, you still got to accept the fact there was a lot of luck for me to have seen that thing in the first place.
I don't know. I think it's you obviously have, and I'm the same way, and I encourage others to be the same way. Have your eyes peeled, eyes wide open, always looking for opportunity, and be ready to pounce on it. Sometimes you don't exactly know where it's going to go or what it's going to do. Kind of the thing with the Miami Vice and the other one. You don't know exactly where this is going to go, but you know you need to do something. And having your eyes peeled for those opportunities. And I mean, holy cow, look where you are now. That's so
It's
exciting.
mad, isn't it?
It's mad. Wow. So, Nick, I think we're going to have to do a part 2 because I want to learn so much more about your story, and I want to learn so much more about Motoholic. But I know that we'll be able to catch up soon in just a few weeks. But seriously, thank you so much for being on the show. And you definitely have an uncharted path to where you are now. But this just
100%.
goes to show. Again, anybody listening, you just never know where life's going to take you. But if you're willing to be open-minded and to let it take you, but to also put a lot of hard work behind it, I mean, just look at how successful you are. That is fantastic.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think you've got to go for it. But I think also you've got to be prepared for the fact that sometimes you have a great idea and a great opportunity, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And that thing about syndicating the boat tests and all that, I still think that was a brilliant idea, and I still think that really should have worked, and it didn't. And you've got to accept the fact that, for all the success stories and all the, well, this went well, that happened, and now look at me now, is great. But you've got to consider that along the way there's going to be a this happened and that happened, and then it all went to crap.
Well, there's going to be
a ton
of things that you try that don't work. But whether call them mistakes or failures or anything, or whatever you want to call them, that's where you probably learn the most. And I always say, I embrace mistakes. I embrace failures because that's where you learn. And those are what, one of the biggest mistakes of my life sent me onto the path of the greatest success of my life. So, you're absolutely right about bringing up the things that don't work because those didn't work is why you're where you are now. So imagine you would be somewhere completely different if those things had worked. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think the message there is don't be afraid of failure.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid of failure. Welcome failure because again, mistakes and failing, that's where you learn the most. Nobody ever learned tons and tons by doing something right. People learn tons and tons by making the mistakes. Embrace that failure, and then it puts you on the path to where you're supposed to be. Oh my God, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. I think again we're gonna have to come back for a part 2. But everybody, this is Nick of Aquaholic and Motoholic that I think we're gonna learn about in part 2. But again, this just goes to show you where a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work will go. Thanks, Nick.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Callie. It's always lovely to talk to you.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.